What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some games that I'm still playing after 100%. Games that were so compelling I decided that even after I was done with them, and even some of my content on them, that they were worth continuing to play for one reason or another. In some cases, this is just because I liked these games an enormous amount, and in others it's because I actually still have some content planned for them, not to bury the lead, I suppose. But be it upcoming DLC, relevancy to upcoming games, or simple fun, I am in fact still playing pretty much all of these in some capacity. Though, before we get into all of that list, basically, I thought it might be fun to actually mention one that I am not covering so much at all, really, and that is, in fact, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. You see, this is actually my most played game from 2021 to 2024, and it looks like 2025 will finally be the year that I am no longer playing it as my most played, and that is largely because after wrapping up all of its content updates last year, including a video of my own covering the entirety of the story, which came in at just under 5 hours, by the way, I think it's safe to say I've played my fair share of that game. But with all of that pretty much being done at this point, I do finally find myself not really feeling the urge to play it much more, which means I think 2025 will finally be the year it is in fact not on my most played list. But with that out of the way, let's move on to the actual list here. Kicking it off first with I think the one that might actually surprise people a bit, and that is Solium Infernum. Solium Infernum is like a grand strategy title that puts you in the role of an archfiend vying for dominance over the vacant throne of hell. Now, historically, this is a genre that I have not enjoyed playing terribly much. In fact, Solium Infernum seems to be the one exception to the rule there, because something about it just really speaks to me. Something about undergoing devious plots as an archfiend trying to take over that throne is, for whatever reason, the push that I needed. Now, you have a few different ways of doing that. Obviously, brute force is certainly an option, but various dark rituals, sorceries, even the much more dreaded politics are all certainly options for you as you make your way down that road. But any one of those reasons might be very well while I continue to play this one, as every once in a while I find myself firing up a game of it as it pretty well stays installed on my computer at this point, and I've actually just about got all the achievements. And yet, in spite of that, this is not a game I'm ever going to review because I feel like I might simply be out of my depth a bit on this one, as I'm really just not familiar enough with the genre to speak confidently about it, frankly. But while I can recognize the sort of quality of the other versions of these types of games that I have played, for whatever reason, this is the only one that I actually enjoy playing personally, which is obviously what it's doing on this list. Moving on a bit though, we then have our second title, which is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Perhaps no surprise there given its recent DLC that I just reviewed, but the reasons I continue to play this are a few actually. For starters, there's more DLC to come that I want to cover, the recent hardcore patch, the fact that it's my current frontrunner for Game of the Year for me personally, all certainly valid reasons, but I would say the main thing is primarily down to the hardcore mode. You see, since that particular update launched, I've been going through it on hardcore with all negative perks so I could grab those achievements, but the thing is, that's a bit of a time investment, and this year has been absolutely stacked with video game releases that I have obviously been busy covering, and as such, I haven't exactly been able to dedicate a whole host of time to that hardcore playthrough, and as a result of this, it's been slow going with just a little bit of time spent here and there. In fact, I would say I'm like 20-25 hours into that playthrough at this point, starting to finally clear off a lot of the content in the Trotsky region, as my skills and the mitigation of the negative perks has largely been handled at this particular juncture. Though in explaining that, you might realize that while I 100% the initial release of it, discounting some bugged achievements, mind you, obviously with the updates there's actually a couple achievements I'm missing these days, so if anything, I guess you could say that I'm continuing to strive for the 100% on this one. Moving right along, next up we've got a real easy one with Baldur's Gate 3. So this largely has to do with the fact that it recently got all of its new subclasses via patch 8 that I covered and even streamed actually. In particular though, I wanted to do a full run of the Hexblade Warlock on my own time, as that is one of my favorite subclasses from D&D 5e, and with my birthday being a little bit over a week away, I've been doing some playing there, and I plan on playing at least a bit of it for my birthday proper, so I can enjoy a sort of last hurrah playthrough with my favorite subclass, and while I may very well continue to play this in the future. There won't really be much of a reason to beyond this after that, but as for right now, I'm currently playing it because of that specific reason. But it's been pretty fun. Fourth on the list, though, we then have Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. This is another game that stays installed on my computer, not least of which because it's kind of a pain to have to reinstall the unofficial patch every single time if I were to uninstall it, and the file size is really small anyway. But Bloodlines is one of those games I've played backwards and forwards. I really enjoy it, and in many ways I'd say it's somewhat of a comfort game for me at this point, but that's not the only reason I'm continuing to play it, actually. So that's largely down to the fact that with Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 coming up, there's an opportunity there to both give people a fresh look at the original, as we actually, if ever, get a proper release date for 2, and yes, obviously there's a million reasons to be skeptical there. They've delayed it a million times. Another one wouldn't be unheard of by any means. But regardless, if it is actually given a release date and is about to come out and everything, something I can do there, though, is go back over Bloodlines 1. And while I have reviewed it quite some time ago, I, truth be told, kind of hate that review, and an opportunity to simply redo it, as it was one of my first very early ones, would be welcome to me, at least, as I think I could do a better job of representing what makes that game so great. And for all of those reasons, it's a game I continue to play. Which brings us to our final entry, though, which is actually Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. So this is a game I continue to play, not least of which because Skull Week is about to kick off, which is Warhammer's big event where they talk about all their upcoming video game showcases. And Rogue Trader, having recently released a bunch of information about their upcoming DLC, Lex Imperialis, I think is likely to make a pretty big showing there, and probably get a release date for that DLC, which will bring the new Overseer archetype and all of its little sort of cybernetic animal companion type deals. But also Void Shadows was really one of, I would say, the best DLCs Owlcat has done, and I want to see if they can follow up on that with Lex Imperialis, adding a bunch more to the game and hopefully continuing to be really good. Now, what'll be curious in that regard, though, is actually that Lex Imperialis is the last of their slated DLC, and while they may very well continue to make more, that would have to obviously come as its own separate announcement, and it'll be curious to see if that game has nearly as long of the legs that Wrath of the Righteous did. But it's obviously a great CRPG, there's more content to come for it, and as a pretty big CRPG channel at this point, that's really all the justification I need to continue to play it, which is obviously why it's on this list. Though speaking of Skulls and Warhammer and Owlcat, I also think it's not impossible we might get some more news there, given that they've had a really consistent schedule for their releases up until this point, and if they were to continue with their prior release cadence, something like the Skulls event or the Summer Games Fest would actually be when you could expect an announcement on whatever else they happen to be working on, be that another Warhammer title or something else entirely. But obviously we'll have to wait and see on that one. For now, it's just a great CRPG with more content to come. But that is as good a place as any to wrap up this particular video, and to that end, I would love to hear about any games you are continuing to play in this year of tremendous video game releases. Have any of them caught your eye, or are you naturally sticking to older titles that are by far and away the majority? That naturally means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, though regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.